Security cameras captured the last normal moment, a father picking up his 3 little girls for what should have been a simple weekend visit. 9-year-old Sarah, 8-year-old Emma, and 5-year-old Lily believed they were going on an adventure with Daddy. But in the darkness of the Pacific Northwest mountains, something terrible was waiting. 4 days later, their small bodies were discovered in a remote forest clearing. A scene so horrific that seasoned investigators struggled to process what they found. As detectives began unraveling the evidence, a chilling pattern emerged. Months of ignored warning signs, and a father slowly descending into madness while authorities looked the other way. But what truly terrified everyone was this. Investigators now believe every detail was carefully planned. This wasn't rage. This was calculated murder. It started like any other Friday evening in Wenatchee, Washington. David Martinez arrived at his ex-wife Rebecca's home at exactly 5 p.m. This was his scheduled visitation. 3 hours with his daughters, nothing more. The girls were thrilled. Despite their parents' bitter divorce, they still loved their father deeply. Time with Daddy was precious. But Rebecca sensed something wrong the moment David appeared at her door. She would later tell investigators he seemed hollow, detached, and almost mechanical in his movements. When she asked about their evening plans, he gave only vague responses. "Just spending time together," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Rebecca didn't panic immediately. This was their father, after all. The visit was supposed to be brief. 3 hours, and they'd be home for dinner. Nothing about this moment screamed immediate danger, but deep in her gut, maternal instincts were screaming warnings she couldn't yet understand. By 8 p.m., those quiet fears were growing into something much darker. David hadn't checked in. Text messages went unread, and phone calls rolled straight to voicemail. Rebecca tried to stay rational. Maybe they stopped for ice cream, or maybe they lost track of time at the park. But 30 minutes passed, then an hour, then another hour. Still nothing. By 9:45 p.m., Rebecca's worst fears had taken control. Her hands shaking, she dialed 911. When police officers arrived, they found a woman in complete distress. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She explained that David had always been reliable with the girls. He never missed return times. If plans changed, he always called first. This behavior was completely out of character. But Rebecca also shared something else that made officers' blood run cold. David had been struggling for months. He was homeless, living out of his truck. His mental health was deteriorating rapidly. She described him as increasingly unstable and unpredictable.
Where do you think he might be headed?
He was last pinged going out of Leavenworth, the 76 station. So I'm thinking up in the mountains. He prefers a secluded area with maybe some running water and a nice campfire. So much, and I hope they're safe. I hope that their dad is safe, and then I just hope that he realizes that he can bring them home and that we can figure out anything else after this.
Police immediately launched a search operation. Traffic surveillance footage showed David's silver Honda Civic leaving Wenatchee at 5:35 p.m. This seemingly minor detail would prove crucial. It was a direct violation of their court-approved custody agreement. David was strictly forbidden from taking the children outside the immediate area. Officers canvassed local motels where David occasionally stayed during his homeless periods. They checked parks and restaurants, anywhere a father might take his daughters. Nothing. No check-ins, no sightings, no trace of David or the 3 girls. Wenatchee police immediately requested an Amber Alert from the Washington State Patrol, but the request was denied. Officials claimed insufficient evidence of immediate danger since David was the children's biological father with legal visitation rights.
If we were to issue an Amber Alert, every time someone with custodial privilege is late getting that child back, we'd have Amber Alerts just about every day.
But Rebecca knew this wasn't a simple custody dispute, and so did the investigating officers. David was homeless, mentally unstable, and had just violated a court order. Every instinct told them these children were in real danger. By Saturday morning, another red flag appeared. David and the girls were scheduled to attend a charity walk downtown. It was something they'd planned for weeks, and something the girls had been excited about. But they never showed up. No phone call, no explanation, no word at all. This finally triggered action. By Saturday afternoon, after Wenatchee detectives provided additional evidence about David's mental state and recent behavior, the Washington State Patrol authorized an endangered missing person advisory. It wasn't an Amber Alert, but it allowed them to broadcast vehicle information on highway signs and reach the public through emergency systems. The FBI immediately began analyzing David's cell phone data from Thursday and Friday, hoping to triangulate possible locations where he might have taken the children. following electronic trails through cell towers and GPS data. On Monday morning, Rebecca made a desperate plea to local media. Even then, she couldn't bring herself to believe David would hurt their children. By Monday afternoon, investigators had narrowed their search to a specific wilderness area near Leavenworth. Phone records indicated David had been in that remote region multiple times over the past month. They'd also secured an arrest warrant, finally giving them the legal authority they needed. At 3:45 p.m., search teams arrived at the designated area and made a discovery that would haunt them forever. David's silver Honda Civic sat abandoned on a narrow Forest Service road miles from the nearest town. The driver's door hung open as if someone had left in a hurry. Dark stains covered the rear bumper, stains that would later be confirmed as blood. Inside the vehicle, investigators found evidence of what should have been a happy family outing. Children's backpacks, juice boxes, coloring books, even a small teddy bear one of the girls had brought along. Everything was still there, untouched, like frozen moments of innocence. The area surrounding the abandoned car was carefully searched. Within hours, the worst possible outcome was confirmed. In a small clearing about 50 yards from the road, searchers found the bodies of Sarah, Emma, and Lily Martinez. Each child had been bound with zip ties. Plastic bags covered their heads. The medical examiner would later determine they died from asphyxiation. A father had murdered his own children in cold blood.
A heartbreaking end to the search for three little girls, 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia Decker, found dead near the Rock Island campground near Leavenworth. Now a manhunt for the sisters' father, 32-year-old Travis Decker.
The news devastated the Wenatchee community. Neighbors, teachers, and friends. Everyone struggled to understand how a father could commit such an unthinkable act against his own children.
I don't know, I have a little girl myself, so that's, it's shocking.
But to truly comprehend what led to this tragedy, we must examine the months of warning signs that preceded it. Signs that were documented, reported, and tragically ignored. Rebecca and David Martinez had been married for 8 years before everything fell apart. By January 2024, Rebecca filed for divorce, citing David's increasingly erratic and frightening behavior in legal documents. Initially, custody was shared equally. David would take the girls every other weekend. But as his mental health deteriorated and he lost his housing, Rebecca became increasingly concerned about their safety. By fall 2024, Rebecca filed for emergency custody modification. David, a former Marine with diagnosed PTSD and bipolar disorder, was spiraling out of control. Court documents painted a disturbing picture of a man coming apart at the seams. Rebecca wrote in her filing, "David's mental health issues have intensified since leaving the military. His behavior has become unpredictable, narcissistic, and increasingly frightening to both myself and our children." She documented specific incidents that should have been massive red flags. Times when David showed up at her home screaming for the children. Occasions when he simply didn't appear for scheduled visits, leaving the girls heartbroken and confused. And most terrifying of all, instances when the children called her crying because David had abandoned them with strangers. The court listened to Rebecca's concerns and ruled in her favor. David was ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation and complete anger management counseling before any further visitation could occur. The judge also signed a new parenting plan with strict limitations: no overnight visits, no travel outside Wenatchee, and all visitations subject to David's compliance with mental health treatment. But here's the most tragic part of this entire story. When the children disappeared, David had never signed the updated custody agreement. He had never begun the required mental health treatment, and he had never attended a single anger management session. The system had identified the danger, issued orders to protect 3 innocent children, and then failed completely to enforce those protections. What makes this case even more chilling is what investigators discovered next. Cell phone records show that David had visited the exact location where the children's bodies were found 2 days before he picked them up for that final visit. This wasn't a crime of passion, and it wasn't a father who snapped under pressure. This was premeditated murder, planned and executed with military precision by a man who had sworn to protect his children. Now, with 3 innocent lives lost, the hunt for David Martinez has become a national priority. FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and state police across multiple jurisdictions are coordinating the largest manhunt in Washington state history.
We've been conducting a search since early this morning up until later on this afternoon. That, unfortunately, has not allowed us to locate the suspect yet, but we are not done searching. As we speak, the Marshal's Office, the FBI, they're processing leads, they're conducting follow-up, and we will not rest until Travis is located.
David Martinez remains at large, armed and extremely dangerous. His military training in survival and evasion makes him particularly difficult to track. Authorities warn that he has the skills to live off the grid indefinitely.
Travis, if you're listening, this is your opportunity to turn yourself in. Do the right thing, do what you need to do, and take accountability for your actions. We're not going to go away, we're not going to rest, and we're going to make sure we find you. You will be brought to justice.
A $50,000 reward has been posted for information leading to his capture. Law enforcement agencies urge anyone who spots him to call 911 immediately and not attempt contact. Meanwhile, the community continues to mourn 3 beautiful children whose only crime was loving their father. Vigils have been held, memorials established, and support funds created for their devastated mother. But the questions remain. How many warning signs must be ignored? How many court orders must be violated? And how many children must die before we truly protect those who cannot protect themselves? In the end, Sarah, Emma, and Lily Martinez trusted the wrong person. Their father became their executioner, and a system designed to protect them failed in the most tragic way possible.